Hello everyone and welcome to the 38th episode of the Chess this week. Now the World Cup has reached a gripping part and in the Open we have reached the pre-quarterfinals stage. Let's see how things went there, starting with the group of the world number one in ratings, the former world champion Magnus Carlsen. Now Magnus reached the pre-quarterfinals, but it was by no means a flowery path. Till the third round, Magnus had a smooth sailing with a 1.5 win over his countrymate Aryan Tari. But the fourth round really took everything out of Magnus after a careless moment led him to lose the first game in his matchup against the German prodigy Vincent Kiemer. Magnus, true to his champion qualities, he managed to strike back immediately in game 2, keeping the match alive, and then he squandered winning advantages in game 3, game 4, but finally managed to win the 6th game and managed to sail through to the pre-quarterfinals with a 3.5, 2.5 scoreline. So this was Magnus's path. Gukesh had a relatively smoother sailing. Till round 3, he didn't have much problems with 2 smooth wins, but in round 4, it did go to the tiebreak against the Russian prodigy, Andriy Esipenko. This was also a close match. It went down the wire. Neither of the persons having any large advantage throughout the match, but Gukesh was the one who always kept a little more pressure, and in the fourth game, this accumulated pressure told as Esipenko just blended a piece and ended up losing the match. So he's out of the World Cup and Gukesh is through to the pre-quarters. Vidit had a much easier round 4, although round 2 and round 3 took everything out of him. 2 years post his win over the beast, Adiban, in Sochi, it was also in the third round and that was also a 5-4 scoreline. Vidit had a similar match against the German Grandmaster Matthias Blubam, but in the fourth round against the French Grandmaster Etienne Bacro, Vidit had no problems winning 1.5, and he was in fact the first Indian to qualify to the pre-quarters. And moving on to the much anticipated clash between Nihal Sarin against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Nihal played a fantastic match. In the classical portion, it was pretty much even Stevens. And in the rapid, they had a crazy third game. Nihal, a bit unfortunate to miss out in that double-edged game, which was actually kind of similar to the Nepo-Ding World Championship match itself. It was topsy-turvy, but in the end, Nepo's better nerves and experience came in handy, and he managed to win the third game. In the fourth game, Nihal started with 1-B3. No wonder he ended up losing that game and he was out of the World Cup. So this was Nihal's story. Nepo goes to the pre-quarters and the winner of this match was to play against Vidit. So Nepo will be the one to play against Vidit in the pre-quarters. And the other impressive Indian in the fray, Arjun Erigaisi, he managed to continue with another smooth 1.5 win against Javakir Sindaro. Earlier in the third round, he had defeated Vladimir Fedoseev, and Javakir, who managed to make a big upset, defeating the 10th seed Maxim Lagra. He fought with all his might, but Arjun managed to win second game after a lot of pressure in both the games exerted on Sindaro. And last but not the least, the much anticipated clash between the prodigy Pragnananda and Hikaru Nakamura. This was perhaps one of the most anticipated matchups in the World Cup so far, and Prag, who turned 18 not so long ago, he had his birthday just a few days ago, he announced his entry into his adult life with a resounding victory over Hikaru Nakamura. Prag really stood up to the challenge. And in the classical portion, it didn't even look like Hikaru was a favorite. Prag was in fact the one who had better chances for the major part of their first classical game. It ended in a draw. The second game was an even and balanced draw between both the players. But in the tie break, Prag was winning in less than 10 moves with the black pieces. And that set the tone of the tie break. Hikaru, who is a master at saving difficult positions, this one turned out to be too steep a challenge even for Hikaru, and Prag converted it successfully. So he wins this matchup 3-1, and in the next game with the white pieces, Prag played confidently. He never left a shred of doubt into who was going to win this match. A very convincing performance by Prag, and this brings up pre-quarterfinals draw, the round of 16, which features 4 Indian players, 25% of the field consists of Indian players at the end of the fourth round in the pre-quarters. How amazing is that? And Magnus Carlsen takes on the Ukrainian legend Vasyl Ivanchuk. Gukesh will face the Chinese Grandmaster Wang Hao, who has made it as far as the candidates in the past. And he's an extremely strong player, although not the most motivated player out there. If Magnus and Gukesh both win their match, they might end up facing each other in the quarterfinals. And the pre-quarters between the local boy, Abbas Onijat, who has played a fabulous tournament so far, knocking out Anish Giri on the way, Peter Swiedler on the way, and he faces the UAE number 1, Saleh Asare. Vidit faces Jan Nepomniachtchi. Fabiano Caruana faces the defending champion, Jan Christoph Duda. So this is going to be a heavyweight clash, and Linia Dominguez faces Alexei Sarana, who had knocked out Wesley So, one of the top seeded players in the tournament. And then at the bottom, there is the clash between Arjun Erigasi against Swedish number 1, Niels Grandelius, and Ferenc Berkus against Pragnananda, who has toppled Hikaru, but he has to make sure that he doesn't underestimate his opponent, Ferenc Berkus. He's not the most well-known GM, but he was also once a prodigy, a player in the age group of people like Harikrishna, Bhujianshi, and that generation of players. So this rounds up the pre-quarterfinals draw in the open section. Now moving on to the women's championship. This one is already in the quarterfinal stage, as this has one round lesser than the open section. There are half the number of players in the Women's World Cup as opposed to the Open World Cup. And India had a setback in the form of Koneru Hampi being upset by the Georgian Grandmaster Bela Kotanashvili. Hampi lost the first game of this matchup, but she bounced back with the black pieces in a championistic way, winning and equalizing the score 1-1. But in the rapid tiebreak, Bella convincingly won both her games and she scored a 3-1 win. So Hampi is out in the fourth round of this championship in the pre-quarters. However, Harika still keeps the Indian hopes out there in the women's section, and she also hasn't had an easy path there. In the third round, she took even one game longer than Vidit, winning in 10 games, 5.5, 4.5 against Leela Javakashvili. However, in the fourth round, it was much shorter compared to the third round. She won 2.5, 1.5, but the match was incredibly challenging. And there were several moments where her opponent, the Dutch prodigy, Edine Roebers, was actually the one having the upper hand. Harika, in the end, she managed to prevail, and this sets up a quarterfinal clash against Alexandra Goryashkina, who is the second seed in this tournament. Now, if Harika manages to win this game, she has a 75% chance of getting into the candidates, as the top 3 qualifies to the candidates in both the sections. So she just needs to win this important matchup, and she's almost there, but her opponent is a formidable foe. And the other quarterfinal clashes, Tan Zhongyi against Bella Kotanashvili, Nurgul Salimova against Paulina Shovalova, and Elizabeth Pace, who managed to topple the reigning world champion Ju Wenjum. She faces Anna Muzichuk, who had a difficult win against her sister Maria Muzichuk. So this is a roundup of the women's section, and both the tournaments are at a gripping phase right now. Do let us know in the comments below who are your favorites to win the World Cup in both the Open as well as the women's section. Moving on from the World Cup, a couple of other important events. The Summer Chess Classic in St. Louis, and this was won by Nicolas Theodorou. Amongst the Indian challengers, there were 3 players: Raunak Sadhwani, Krishnan Sasikaran, and V. Pranav. Raunak played really well in the second half of the tournament and finished in the second place with 5.5 out of 9. V. Pranav, who had a fabulous first half, he lost a bit of steam towards the end and finishes with 4 points. And Shashi finishes in the 8th place with 3.5 points in his first major tournament post his injury. So this rounds up the Summer Chess Classic. But before we end the episode, there is one spectacular, phenomenal event, a story featuring the 17-year-old Aditya Dhingra. Now, Aditya Dhingra, just about 2 months ago, had a rating of a mere 2027. Fast forward 2 months, and now he holds a rating of 26.8. a massive jump. And looking at the time taken by the other prodigies to go from 2000 to 2600, it took Prag 4 years, Alireza 4 years, Gukesh 5 years, and that's generally how long it takes for people to go from 2000 to 2600. In a statement to chess.com, FIDE's head of PR, Anna Botasova, she calls the case with Aditya exceptional and extremely rare, and this has been a record of sorts. It's been one of the biggest gains in the history of chess. Something similar happened in 2015 with the 2020 US Junior Chess Champion John Burke, and he went from 2258 directly to 2600. He's now rated 2592. Let's see how far Aditya ends up going and how much can he maintain this momentum. But this has been one of the spectacular events, even in my experience. What are your thoughts on this? Do let us know in the comments below. And with this spectacular game, Aditya has managed to reach the top 20 juniors in one go. He now features in the top 20 juniors live rating with a rating of 26.8. He's at the 16th place, and he's crossed the likes of V. Pranav, Darda Daniel, and Christopher Yu. Amongst the juniors who played in the World Cup, Gukesh continues to stand up there with 27.57. Vincent Gamer had a spectacular run, and Prag has also been having a fabulous run. Both of them were at 26.90 in the previous list. Now they're at 27.17. Arjun gaining a bit of rating there. He's at 27.8. Nihal 26.94, so close to 2700. And Raunak also gaining some points in the Summer Classic to end up with a rating of 26.32 as of the time of recording this episode. That's this episode of Chess This Week. If you like this episode, then do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and see you all soon.